so much fun, y'all.
Oh, why does this look kind of strange? Hey, everyone. Can everyone hear me okay? I got kicked out of my Twitch, so I had to restart everything. I'm not gonna do too much of a recap because honestly we talked about this for like an hour and a half yesterday, so I'll probably just end up transcribing those notes from yesterday if that is okay with you guys, because I don't want to get distracted in real time again like yesterday, because I got very close to missing some pretty big trades yesterday. If you guys are okay with that. I wanted to see if they would hold off this range in here, so kind of see if they hold off the zone. I started adding into tomorrow, which, well, actually rolling. I rolled half and then I just added to that position, but I already had calls heading into today. I ended up doing some SPX for today too. Overnight conditions was perfect, honestly, so even this was yesterday's, we had like the 320, 332. Yesterday's overnight conditions was honestly perfect. So they ended up pushing into the close, as you guys know. They pinned closer to the 60, 69, 27.50, 69.25 area, which I think is good. Like obviously 2.8 would have been a little bit better, or 3.2, but that's still a good pin. They tagged exactly that 3.175, back tested 69.20. You can kind of see how they held pretty nicely overnight yesterday. Like this was very, very structured holds of our 69.20s. And I did say that if we hold 69.20s, that's going to give us the highest odds of getting a push to core ranges. And so basically these areas here, like 6.9, 6.8, 7.1, 7.8. I don't have levels marked on this template, but you get the idea. Okay, so this gave basically the highest odds of seeing that. And you can see how nicely the structure is holding. Like, look at this. Off 7.1 hold, 7.8 stall, 6.8 hold. Okay, in my opinion, this, even if I delete this break right here off 69.20s to core, like these are very, very nice clearance breaks. Okay, do you guys see that? To these ranges in here, and they're actually perfect. Like pay attention to how well they held. This morning they came and opened at 693775, so above that 6936, and then they took out 6946 in a single stick. You can see like within the first 5 minutes they cleared the channel. This was very important, by the way. This is partially why they're breaking like this. So first 5 minutes this morning they cleared the channel. Channel cleared within 5 minutes of open. If that didn't happen, what could have occurred? So if they didn't clear the channel here in those first 5 minutes, what could have happened? if they fail to get out of this box range, because they did digest it overnight quite a bit, but not too much above 4.4, which we need to document that actually, because there wasn't too much digestion above 4.4, which could end up implying that they bring it back to that range. And that area was very, very big that we discussed yesterday, the 69.44 overhead. And just in case you guys forgot, that was the 107 points off yesterday's open. Okay, you guys might have forgotten that. So, okay, the 6945, 42, 33, these were the 107, 110, 115, okay? And also off yesterday's lows. So yesterday's lows was what? 68.26, 68.28, correct? So 68.28, 68.28 area, all the way back down here. That's crazy to think about that was yesterday's lows, but okay, in real time right here yesterday. Do you see what I'm saying? These would be the 115 point, 128 point marks. Okay, so they basically cleared the full core ratios off the core holds. I don't know if that does that make sense to you guys? So I know they're not core levels, but like off this low right here, okay, the 2.6. Do you see what I'm saying? These are full ranges. So like these were the 115.5 ratios, which is also a third of 346. So just so that you're aware, is the 115.75. So clearing this area here is very, very important. I'm just going to send the link because it was calculated to that. So once they kind of broke above these ranges here, they're already breaking 128 points. So you see this hold right here, you guys, of like 5.6, 5.5, 5.8. This was also 128 to 132 point hold off yesterday's lows, and also off yesterday's open. So yesterday we opened around 3.4. Okay, this is, I'm just showing you guys this off yesterday's ranges so you don't forget. So it's not just that, it's also where they're taking this to and where they extended. I know they align with 69. I understand that they align with 69, 67, 68, but I also want you to see why. That's important from a point perspective. So it is a core area. They held 6.8. That's perfect. But that's another reason why that area mattered a lot. Okay, so this was a very, very big spot for us. In terms of where we closed yesterday, the 69.27 area. Okay. This was the first 22 point break, 33 point break. Do you see it? 34 point break. What kind of breaks do you normally get though when you get core ranges? This is the 52, 55. What kind of breaks can we get? Why could they stall here? And this is exactly where they started stalling yesterday before they pushed. We're hitting those 72 to 75 to 78 point intervals here. What kind of ranges were those yesterday? These, okay? Yesterday, mid-core ratios was aligned to neutral zone. Okay, so we knew that if they snap that area, they could give full range. Correct? Can you guys like confirm that you're actually listening and you can hear me, so I'm not just speaking for nothing? So yesterday, for instance, the 69.14, okay? If you pay attention to 69.14 yesterday, was that a crucial spot yesterday? The 69.14 area in specific? Yes, right? And you can see they took out the full neutral zone, which is usually around 6,900, 68.99 to 69.14. They took it out in a single stick, okay, at 350. This is what allowed for that extension / expansion period, okay? So normally when you break that, I'm just going to copy paste it here. And this is how you could get 69.20s. That's why we jumped in SPX yesterday when I saw that coming. Typically when you start getting that, you can extend above 72, 75, 78 points to the full ratios of like 103, 107, 115. Do you see what I'm saying? That's why they kept stalling last night around the channel, because those were the 103, 107, 115 point ratios. That was the extension. And I had said that they probably won't do that in real time, but that is going to push it there eventually. Okay. And that's basically what they did. So kind of like yesterday off these ranges here, you can see this is, do you see what I'm saying, you guys? This is when they started breaking those 72, 73. Okay. Those are it basically takes it into another range break. It's a pretty huge break. And if you pay attention to when they broke yesterday at 350, it's not just the levels that they broke, like obviously the neutral ranges is extremely calculated, but they broke that full range, okay, which immediately puts you at an odd of getting around 103 points. And I did say that we probably won't hit it in real time. There's a decent chance that they'll likely trigger those ranges like in the after hours or something, but maybe not in the real time session. First thing I noticed when the session opened is they hit 103 points. Okay, do you see this? From yesterday's lows, yesterday's open. This is when they broke 110 points. Okay, and then once they started stalling close to 115, this is where there was a bit of a wall. So it's the same thing. You can typically double core ratios if you want, which will give us the idea of like our bigger targets here, which we already know is around the 70, 57, 58 area. But another way that you can look at this is either you can extend off here or you can just start over again. So by starting over again, I mean starting from today's open, today's close, okay? Currently right now, if we're not starting over and we're just continuing off the max core ratios, okay, you're already hitting about the mid core points. Does that make sense? Like around 52, 57, 58. If we're going to start over again, so basically off of the 69.20s close, let's say, we're already hitting 3/4 of the way. And the reason I say that is because you want to look at it based on timing too, right? Because that obviously makes a huge difference. So this would be off the actual session close, session open, session lows. So off session open, session close, session lows, they're already hitting 80 points, 79 points. Okay? Do you see what I'm saying? Off the actual session open, they're hitting 74 points here. So what could that tell us? Or what can that tell us? Especially around this point in the day. So 1:15 is the median time frame for the session. So 1:15 p.m. is mid-session. Okay? What could that tell us? It's specifically if they start snapping the 74, 75, 79 point ranges here. So off session lows, we've already hit 79 points. Off session open, session close, we've hit around 74, 75. What could that mean? And think about it from a time perspective too. So time, price has to align. Even back in here, this was mid-session, 12:30, 12:45. Do you see how they reduced range right at mid-session and right at the 75 point intervals? I'm taking the time to explain this to you guys because it is very important. This is how you're going to get better at understanding range for a session, okay? So you don't miss the whole moves. Do you see what they did? Do you guys understand this concept? They basically stalled us right at mid-session in terms of breaking that 3/4 of that range, okay? Why do you think they might have done that? Kind of similar to how they broke the range at 350 yesterday. This could take you to like 70.08. Why do you think they might have done that? I didn't actually see how many points we've moved from the actual session open in real time today, but I'm pretty sure we've broken that 50-point metric. Yeah, we have. So off the actual open, that's why there could be some overheads around the 70.06, 70.08. Okay. Off session close, same thing. Do you see what I'm saying? That's where we could start seeing some overheads in these areas around like the neutral zones. Where could they push this to though? In specific to session lows, core ratios, relative to time, obviously, and like how much time, because these are very huge areas. So off session lows, they could push the 70-23, 70-22 area. Off here, like you can see like the 107, 103, okay, 110. It's crazy because they align right with our spots, okay? And these have been very big areas in the past anyway, so they are our calculated ranges. 115 points I think is going to be closer to 70-36 or something like that off the session lows, okay, versus like session open. And this is crazy because pay attention, off this actual session open, session close, if we were to break core ratios, so 107 points, that would net us 70.35, right? Let's move this up. Correct? Do you see that? If they broke it 110 points, that would get us to probably close to 70.38. If they broke us max core ratios off session open, session close, which is usually 115.5 points, and that 115 is also a third of 346 points, okay, they would be testing all-time highs. Do you see what I'm saying? Today's session open and session close, when looked at from a core ratio, which this is a core close, so obviously it's going to be a core ratio that has the highest alignment. That takes us back to what? What does that take us back to? All-time highs. Okay? Today's open and close is linked to all-time highs on max core ratios. $107, $110, $115 points. Okay? That's pretty impressive. Today's range off the real-time open, okay, is linked to 70.53, 52. Okay? And we said off the session ranges, it's closer to here. So off the session lows, it's closer to 70.35. But if we look at it from an extended range, I guess, of like 128 points or something like that, then that's where you'll see the alignment at 70.52 again. But so is everyone aware of the ranges and why based on open, close, highs, lows? Okay, and then breaking these spots here, it starts putting you into that next realm. So what kind of price action do we want to see specifically at the 6,900, 7,000? That sounds so weird to say right now because we haven't been in that area for a while, but at the 7,000 mark, and specifically during the mid-session right here, which is now starting over again. So usually we can see some breaks probably between like that 115, 124, 130. I'll get the exact times here in a sec. Hold on. These are not exact. Let me see. We started triggering. When did we start triggering lows? Like 2 this morning, 216 and 8. So we should see a structure break right here. Like, I would be shocked if we didn't. Just give me a second, guys. Give me a second because my brokerage for some reason is not letting me back in. Why? Okay, there we go. What the hell? That's so weird. I don't know why it wasn't letting me back in for some reason. Let's see. There's actually some really good like 3-bar continuations. Can you guys document 2:40 p.m.? 2:40 p.m. and we have to do some mid calculations. 2:40 p.m. 1:48 p.m. There's some really nice patterns that you can't really see them on the smaller time frames, but you can see them on, like, I know this is kind of messy, but do you see how this is hitting its third bar here? This is also pretty closely aligned to lows today, okay? It's not exact, but it's very, very close. This is a nice 3-bar. This flips at 4. So we could look at maybe some median times between, and I like this because it's right around the 1:15, which is mid-session. Okay, so this is a very interesting time frame. And the way I would look at this is maybe I would look to see, since this broke and sustained just after 2:15 and broke just after 1:15, we could maybe use those few minutes as our leverage, okay? So you see how it took approximately 3 to 4 minutes or something like that to break right here? Kind of like here. Okay, maybe something similar down here. Okay, yeah, you see when it kind of came back. So we could manually measure that. So between 1:15 and 4, which is pretty funny because that's the mid session and that's end of session anyway. So technically speaking, we'd be looking at those periods regardless, but you can basically look to see, like, the 165 median would be like around 82.5 minutes or something like that, or 82.5 bars. So that would put the emphasis around that 2:37. So that makes sense because I have a flip at 2:40. So let's watch that period of time. That's going to be probably the most important period of time. We can add this 4-minute extension here, 4 to 5 minute extension, based on the fact that that's how long it took when it actually pulled and pushed highs. So this is going to be a pretty important time of day today around that 2:37, 2:40, 2:41, 2:42 window, okay? If we look at this from the wider stance, like a lot of these don't really flip until close, right? So, but we could maybe watch to see 10:32, 2:40, 10:32 a.m. That's when they broke core in here. Yeah, you can see even like that minute delay, and 2:40. So maybe some mid intervals here. I'm just going to measure from here though. Where's 2:40? 2:40. This already passed, but I just want to quickly see what that looks like. To like that's like roughly like 122 minutes. So basically a 2-hour period. But I just want to see 122 minutes, so kind of like right around here. And if we base it off the actual points right here, like around 10:30 to here, or to the calculated frame, that's like right around here. And here, that's 243 minutes. So like roughly 121. It's basically between 120 to 122 minutes. Okay, and probably off this range here. So it's right where they reduced range. Do you guys see that? That's actually insane. Look, these were calculated times right here. So they broke it a little too late, okay? Which means that they'd have to extend this window maybe early because this was a little too late. They'd have to try breaking probably early during that window is how I would interpret that. And maybe that could start as early as like the 2:30 window. This is going to be a very crucial point for the session. like around the 2:30, 2:32. I always watch that time of day anyway, but for today's session, it's actually a calculated period, okay? Specifically 2:37, 2:40, 2:41, but we'll watch that entire period here as a very calculated point in the session today. And then the points when they actually broke, this is what could extend us. We actually had odds yesterday at 320, so that's pretty funny that 320, 321 would potentially come back into play again today. And right around in here based on these time increments. Okay, so this will be a very crucial point in the session for us this afternoon. What conditions do you guys think has to be met at this point in time? We have to start making the conditions here. So what do you guys think? What conditions would have to be met at that point in time? You can't hear me? Well, if you guys can let me know ahead of time, so at least I can. It should be fine though. Let me try unplugging my mic. What about now, Brendan? Hold on. What about now? Is that any louder or any better? I have the volume up all the way on OBS, so I don't know. Like it should be. Does this sound better though? I don't know if the desktop, like I have the mic all the way up, but I'm not sure. I just unplugged my microphone though. Okay, that's weird. All right, I'm putting you guys to work. What conditions do we have to do by that 2:30, 2:38 window, you guys think? So we've determined that that's the most important window today. And I'm pretty confident about that, especially after our 320, 331, 350 period yesterday. So what do you guys think? What has to occur during that window? And everyone knows our targets for today, right? Like we are targeting or trying to get to the 60, or sorry, 60. I need to stop saying 60s. 70 20s. Okay, so what conditions have to be set? Okay, that's good. I think it was just Brendan's computer or something. He moved his iPad and it seems to be working fine. So let's have some if and or scenarios here. There's obviously some midpoints here around 2, like between this period and this period here where they started moving around here. And I'm looking at specifically the times that they actually took out the high of day, which was here at 320, at 120. So you could measure the midpoints off of 115 to here, or you could actually measure them off of the other point if you want, like the actual point in time that they took out the highs. So what's half of 85, you guys? You guys have to get better at setting conditions. 85 minutes, so half of that would be 42 and a half minutes, right? So 42 and a half minutes from mid-session is right before 2. Okay, so just in a very, very basic way of looking at this, what has to occur here just before 2 o'clock? So let's measure the actual point in time that they took out that high to our 237 to 240 window. So half of the 77 period is 38 and a half, right? So 38 and a half minutes would be, again, that's probably just before 2. And then off the 240 window, 40 minutes would be, again, just before 2. So what has to occur here before 2 o'clock. We can start, and this is probably the earliest period that this could happen, because if you think of it from like a 20-minute interval or something like that, probably like right here at 140, 135. I already had 136 marked, but I mean, these would be like the quarter intervals, if that makes sense. So like 25% of the time range, 50% of the time range. So let's set some conditions, you guys. Help me set them. Give me a condition for 136 to 140 period. And think about what we had already talked about with those neutral ranges, okay? We're not going to go over it again because I went over it in pretty big detail, but what has to occur, you think? And specifically off those price points. So we already know that we already hit 72.5 to 79 points, right? So what's the next calculated type of area here? Just as a reminder. Okay, we already hit this. What were the next points here? That's like roughly 72, 75. And in specific to like today's open, today's close, today's lows. Around this area here, okay? Which areas do you think we'd have to start triggering? And this actually makes sense because we'd be doing it around the 75% of the session time ending from the time that we hit lows. Okay, so they've already hit the max mid to core ratios here, which is where they had stalled back here. That's basically 7,000. And that's off lows. Okay, off session open. Where do we have to hit? I don't have levels marked, but I'm trying to show you guys this from like a core ratio kind of way of looking at it, which I don't always do because I feel like people get too confused, but this can help you with conditions, especially since we closed at core, opened at core, held at core. So where would they have to break from? And then off, this is off real-time lows, right? This is real-time lows. Is that real-time lows? Yeah, it is. Okay, these should all be aligned with the neutral spots. So where would they have to clear? They open the session around here. Okay, that makes sense that 78 points is 70.15 because these would be like the max ranges. So at an absolute minimum from these session opening ranges, okay, the 72, 74, 75, 79. Okay, right around here. What areas do we have to hit? This is how you start meeting conditions, you guys, to understand if you're going to get your full ratios in the real-time session or not, okay? I don't think we'll get like the full ratios in real time. That'd be pretty insane because that's like taking us to all-time highs, but and again, full ratios would be, in case you guys forgot, the 107, 115 points, which are linked to highs, right? 70.42, that's 115 points. Okay, off today's open. Okay, so keep that in mind. Today's session open and max range is linked to all-time highs. Write it down somewhere. Go back and study it. Something, anything. I don't know if we have the highest odds of doing that today in real time, but these would be the conditions that could help us get there based on incremental percentage of time and price. So what condition has to be met at this point in time, you think? let me open my live so I can at least have this record. Give me a condition, you guys. It's not that hard. We already know what the calculated price points are. I just gave it to you. Obviously 7004, 7005, these are clearly going to be some big spots. Okay, so what conditions would you have to start meeting? Probably as early as these periods here. I'll make this very simple for you guys. Before 2 o'clock, what do you have to do before 2 o'clock? Okay, if you guys stay silent for the whole session, then I'm just going to stay silent for the whole session. Yeah, I feel like probably at least 7004. Okay, like at least that. So clearly you can see here that they're starting to reduce the range a tiny bit. They tried breaking here and then stalled. Right, so can this area start getting a little bit heavy in here? This is where you could start experiencing that kind of like choppier, what do you even call that? Like sideways, slow grind kind of price action. And it would make sense, especially if they're trying to delay until this point in the day, right? Yeah, I would say minimum 7004.5 to 7006. That at least gives us odds of getting 7012, 7015, which are very calculated this afternoon. Okay, 7015, I would say by that 230 to 45 calculated period would probably give us the highest odds of getting 7020s by 4 p.m. Does that make sense? Because our max range is not even 7020s, it's actually 7030s and 40s. So, but not necessarily for real time. That could be something that they do after the bell or into tomorrow. But these periods are what's going to determine that. Could they end up turning this into a pinnable session if they stall these ranges here? Even from a base theory, if they stall the neutral zone or bear neutral zone, could they bring this back to sit in the core ranges here, like around 69, 71, 78, 81, 88? Like they could do that if they end up stalling these ranges here. SPX, think of SPX as the same as you would ES. So you could use the exact same. You know what? Actually, how about today I make a template for SPX? That way everyone has one. So you guys can follow it along too. Because I feel like SPX, some people start getting confused. And when it's really the same thing. So SPX, you'd probably want to do, let's see, 60... 932, 60, 888. I'll make this real quick and then I'll send it to you guys, because then you could just follow along. Obviously it's not going to be as precise, but you guys can go in and modify it later if you want on your own. I'm only going to make it, guys, up until here, okay? Like I'm only going to make it up until here, because then otherwise it's going to be a bit time consuming. I can fix it later, but okay, so these are not going to be perfect, but you guys can adjust them later if you want. Just so that you guys at least have like a base template to work with or something for SPX. I feel like it'd be easier that way than having to constantly go back and forth. I have an Excel calculator, but that I like manually change, but this works too. These are not exact though. Okay, and then your core ranges. Do you want them to be like the exact same as the SPX or the ES ones? Like, I don't have any alerts set, guys. I forgot to set them, so let me know if ES breaks our spots, especially at these points in the day, because these are very important time frames. These are not going to be fully like exact, but they're pretty close. Okay, I think that's gonna be as good as it's gonna get for doing this in like in like 3 minutes, but let me see. You can obviously go in and adjust as needed. It's not gonna be perfect, but like some of these have to be moved a bit. This needs to be moved. That's not bad, honestly. Okay, where is it? I'll pin it in Discord for whoever wants it. SPX 100-point template. Okay, so basically it'd be the same thing. Okay, it would be the same thing as us wanting to get core ranges on SPX. Does that make sense? Like, I've designed the 100-point theory that it should align with both SPX and ES. It's a very complex theory that I made, but these should be aligned with core ratios too. So like 69/70s, 75, 78 would be kind of the same exact things that we looked at for ES earlier today, but like you could apply them to SPX. Okay, like these ranges in here, and the same thing works on NQ. And I did create a template for NQ, but I'll have to look for that later because that's going to be. So the cool thing is these on ES right here are core ratios, okay? But on SPX they're actually core spots, okay? And do you see what I was saying earlier? Like that this area could start getting a bit heavy, kind of sideways, stalls, delays. Yesterday the market was moving in roughly 28-minute intervals, so I wonder if they're going to do the same thing today. It was 28 minutes that they were working with yesterday, right? 28 minutes? Let me check my mic. Yes, it was. Don't ask me why I remembered that. But we were working with 28-minute intervals yesterday. So maybe we can watch the 5-2. And that would make sense maybe even off like just after 2. So maybe this is where we could start setting some the cool thing about SPX on this yesterday is it's the same thing. Like look at where they gapped and closed. They closed basically at core ratios yesterday. Do you see this? And right into the zone. So it's just as bullish as ES closing at 69.20s. Same thing. So then this morning, SPX opened at 69.13. That could be a clue to ES. So ES opened in the channel today, which usually the channel can imply choppy price action, which is why it was very important that they broke this within the first 5 minutes, because we could have been stuck in here all day today if that wasn't the case. SPX opening in a neutral zone would make sense. ES opening in a channel. Both areas could reduce odds a little bit for extending range. So 69, 66, 68 would be the spots on SPX that would have to break. And so far ES is starting to reduce range here. You can even see it happening. Oh, I know. I made this template on ES2 like 2 days ago because it got deleted, but this should be fine. Anyone take the stock trade though, like this ABCL that I looked at the day before? This was actually a really nice play so far. And MARA stalled at 11. We took this long yesterday from here. There was the move back into crypto. I don't know who joined the stream the other night. I have that stream recorded for whoever wants it, because honestly that was a really good stream. And the analysis on crypto on that was actually quite insane if you think about it. Because we were looking at the 74K break, right? What time frame did we look at when we looked at it? It was like something very odd. BTC, what was it? Let me go back and find it. I don't even know what day of the week it is. What day is it today? Today's Tuesday. Today's the 14th. That's crazy. So when would I have done that stream? On the 12th? What day was that? Was that on the 12th or the 11th? Or was that yesterday? When did we do the crypto stream? The day before, right? Yeah, it was before. Okay. I don't remember what the time frame was, but there was. So the 12th, wasn't the 12th Sunday though? So how come I don't see her? Am I insane? I don't see it. I don't think it was Sunday night, you guys. I think I did it on Saturday. I don't think it was Sunday. I'm pretty sure I was like on my computer on Saturday night or something. It was Saturday night. Okay. So, what were those time frames that we used? Because they were super odd frames and we had linked them to those specific dates, which were the period of October 3rd through 29th through November 6th of 2024. 110, 112 day. That's what they were. And we wanted to see if they basically clear back over these ranges. Okay. That's what we had looked at. And where is it? These areas back in here. Because that is what would bring this back to this 50% wall basically, which is what they're doing. Isn't that insane? Look at that. That's actually crazy. This is what we looked at on Saturday on Bitcoin. And the idea was that they would do it here. Yesterday was the day to break 73,794. Right? We had this calculated time because we said it was working within, what was the time intervals that we said? It was 28 and 35 days or 28 and 40, right? And this was the 28th day. That's pretty insane. And look, so these were the calculated flips, and then we had the extension on April 26th. So the idea was that this could get back to these mid marks, basically, like around here, if they start clearing this range in here. There was another time frame we looked at, but I don't remember exactly what it was. That was linked back to highs. When did we hit highs? October. Yeah, it was right in here. October 6th, 7th, 8th. So it was like 138 days or something. Right here. This flips May 19th, like mid Q2. The idea was that if they start clearing these ranges as early as yesterday and today, they are aligning it back to these areas in here. And what we could do is kind of look at the median frame, but these extend through May 20th and May 19th, so kind of like mid-quarter. But the idea was to kind of get it back above this range in here is what puts it at least at an odd of getting back to the top of these bars. And these were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This would be the 6-bar period. On the 112 day and 110 day, you can kind of see it looks a little bit different. They're kind of basing it, I think it was, let me find it. There was specific frames. These ones, the uh, 17, 18, you can kind of see the bear flags here. These flip end of April, okay? So the idea was that even though these are not directly linked to highs, they were linked to lower highs, okay? So this is a very, very quick recap, by the way, of they were linked to like the initial highs. So I think the time frame was roughly, it was whatever was between August 14th, 15th, and this period here. So I don't remember the exact dates, but it was whatever we started kind of forming these specific frames around this period, okay? Like this, like, do you see this? The earliest period is the 19th, and this is linked to those initial highs around that week of August in the summer. August 7th, this flips on the 20th. So I think the most in line was probably the 113 day, but not in terms of structure, but this is linked to the 24th. So basically highlights the period here of like trying to negate those lower highs. Like you see how they kind of sold off and then brought it back. My thoughts are they likely have to bring back the same range that they reduced it by. Does that make sense? So this reduction that they had that then pushed us back right here, this period right here is aligned to this period right here, okay? This period right here is aligned to this period right here. These price points right here, like the 74, 76K, they're aligned to these dates right here. Okay, so how much points did they move in total? It should be aligned to these exact spots, look. So whatever range we had back here on the reduction should be aligned pretty close to the range that we're currently seeing. This part I haven't actually looked at, but I would imagine that that probably is accurate, and those are probably the overheads. How crazy is that? Isn't that insane? And these are the upcoming dates during the 19th, 20th, 24th, 26th. And the extension would be this range in here. So that would basically take out this mid-range supply, or take it back like off these lows. Okay, kind of like in here. I don't know if you guys can see that. Do you see how that would kind of align back to these 81K lows? And this is almost the same period in time here, like this period here versus this period here. So that's why we took some of these crypto plays. Plus, I also noticed a lot of movement in some of those EV names when we looked at on Saturday had, and that makes sense with Tesla coming up, but we noticed it on a few of them, like Plug, and if anyone took those calls, they did pretty well. And LCID, I think, was the second one. This one kind of still stalled, but I like Plug a little bit more. These are some of the previous names that we have looked at in the past. But anyway, it was just an interesting observation for crypto. All right, so what do you guys make from this period here? Specifically, them stalling and not extending. We didn't have the highest odds during the whatever time frame this was, from 1:24 to 2 o'clock, but this would have given us at least an idea of just how much range they could get. So them reducing this by roughly 5 points. What does that tell us? What do you guys think? And to me that makes sense, because we would have preferred that they started breaking at 115 versus 120. So you can already see that there was 6 points back in here, okay, where they kind of stalled and delayed, and specifically off this period here. Do you see it? And off the 114, 115 close, it was 5.25 points until they broke highs. So the theme is very similar. Where they're stalling right here and where they took it back is about 5.25 points. Yeah, there's lots of overhead around 7,000, 6, 8. But what could this entail? What does this imply for this period here? And for the session? We're not just trying to figure out the overhead. We're trying to see what that means for price action, right? So this was the reduction. This is the delay, which caused the reduction, which causes what else? What can that cause, essentially? Another delay, right? Probably want to start retesting then pretty soon. You can see the reductions once it hit that 18-minute mark too. That's pretty cool. So what could this allow for? Remember what I was saying earlier? Do you guys remember what I said earlier? What kind of period could this turn into? And especially if they don't start giving us like certain breaks pretty soon. It could, yeah, it could start becoming a bit pinnable, where they could start moving things a little bit sideways, and obviously we don't want that if we want to extend range, but that's what I drew earlier, was something like this. If they stall, right, we said that they could take it back, and then it could delay, which if they delay the moves of just this to this point in time, this point in time is still linked to end of session, okay? So this is still linked to 4 and 5 p.m., which could allow for those extensions, but if we don't meet those price points at that time, that's where I would say that we'd have to really start to de-risk and reassess, right? Because we do have from the 14th through the 16th, so this technically for today's session is enough range. We're trying to decide if that's actually the max range or not, though. And this would be the area that I would expect this kind of PA, okay, to start occurring. Why? Because these areas are the spots that could expand us or extend us on the session, and the times of day that they could do it at too. So it's not just based on the price points that they're hitting in the ranges, it's the time that they're doing it. Kind of like yesterday. Okay, remember how we had our specific points in time here yesterday? We had the 320, 321, right? Like these periods, and then 332, 245. Like when they started pushing yesterday, these were at exact calculated times of day, which is what allowed for, it was like back in here, right? This is what allowed for that extension into end of session. So this could do the same thing. Which unfortunately makes price action a little bit choppier. What's something progressive that you guys notice though? There's something I noticed right now that actually looks pretty good from the 2 o'clock period onwards. From basically here onwards. So far, anyway. By the way, this is usually the price action that happens when you start getting like 5-6 point ranges. Yeah, they're trying their best to hold 6998, 6999. We had some midpoints around like the 217 period, which is when I was saying like they probably need to start holding there. Otherwise, it's going to really reduce the odds for the 230, 245, 240 period. So probably like closer to these marks in here. Some other individual names though are hitting highs. Like I noticed AMD was retagging high of day. But you can kind of see the slight volatility. NVIDIA was pretty strong today too. And almost hitting its full range. We could set an alert maybe on SPX for breaks of 69, 66 or something. Because that would be a core break. Or entries into core areas at least. What? Do you guys see that? Where's the template? You guys are seeing this, right? Like it just disappeared. I swear I don't know what's wrong with my trading view. I didn't even do anything. I just checked the SPX chart. I don't know why it does that. Like where did the ES chart go? That's so strange. See? I don't know what happened. I swear, it was just there. I just checked SPX and now it's gone. Like, where'd it go? And it was like right after adding that alert. See, now it's gone. Why does that happen? Like, I don't understand. Oh, that's so annoying because I really don't feel like redoing that right now. Is there another template that I already had pinned? Or maybe even if I open that new template that we just opened on SPX. Okay, well, it's on this one, so I don't know. That's just so strange, though. Like, that's so weird. I swear I'm not crazy. I swear to God it does that every single week. And I'm not really sure what triggers it. We figured maybe doing the split screens sometimes triggers it, which maybe that could be the case today, but I don't know. It's so strange. All right, I think it's time that we can maybe do some polls. What do you guys think? Max range for real-time session. Also, don't forget to resub to Twitch, guys, because the Prime falls off every 30 days, and I obviously haven't been streaming on here as much over the last 2-3 months, and specifically once I was fasting and kind of coming back into it now, but those do fall off. 7006 to 7008. 7012, 7015. Okay, I'll set that for 5 minutes. Can you guys vote on that and let me know what you guys think? I want to do the poll before the 2:30, 2:45 period because I think that'll make it a little bit more interesting. I didn't think we had anything else this afternoon. We had a bunch of Fed speakers earlier, but is this set to my time zone? These haven't occurred yet, right? I don't know if this is set to my time zone or not. This thing always changes. How do I see the time zone here? I think this is set to my time zone. I don't think these have occurred yet. I'm not really sure if that's much to move the market from those speakers, but I mean, we have a speaker at 2:10. And President Lagarde at 3 o'clock. I mean, that could be maybe something, but anything else would have to be like direct headline risk. And these kind of reductions here are just kind of pointing us in that direction that we just talked about, especially if they start doing it around that 217, 215 period, which you can kind of see right in here. They started reducing range again, like directly through there too. So what did you guys vote? I feel like this reduction, specifically at 215, 217, that's going to make it pretty tough to get maybe some of the core ranges at this point, unless they get like I don't know, like some sort of like stick breaks around the 230, 245 period. And by stick breaks, I mean like back over 7003, 7004. There is a possibility they could start making it pinnable. And specifically because of them starting to sell down during this period, because this is the mid time frame between like 215, 217, 220. So a lot of this is going to be relative to whether or not they can actually hold 69, 87, 88, and how quickly they can retract this back by that 230, 232, 237 window. They'd have to see some sort of like defensive sticks at this point now. Because I think we did form like a 2-minute 3-bar on the chains. This is the 4th bar, which probably formed a bit of a 2-minute reversal here. Yeah, it did. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. But that's exactly my point. That's exactly why I personally rolled into tomorrow, because the stalls around these points here. And the reduction around 214, 215 is pretty crazy if you think about it. Because had they cleared range up, this kind of range that's been occurring beneath 6999 is the kind of range they could have recycled to the upside. And usually when that happens, that's when they start doubling in range. So like 5.5 points becomes 12, 13 points. Okay, which you can see this is now 12 points. And you can get an idea that these could have been like the extended pushes through like 7010, 7012, 7013, 14, 15. That's actually a good short trade on that 4th bar continuation on the 2-minute. Do you see how the 4th bar expanded on this? That's a 4th bar expansion period. Okay, between 220 and 222. Brokers actually acting a bit wonky at this point in time too, which I always find interesting when we're hitting like a major point in time and price, like 69.88 failures, for instance. Because remember what I said earlier, if they decide to stall the 70.04, 50, which I know is a huge overhead because that would have been the spot that would have pushed us, they could end up taking it back to be pinnable in core ranges. Okay, so which obviously would be a pretty nasty leg down, but it makes sense based on these time intervals here around like 214. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Since they didn't exhaust on that 4th bar, that typically can extend through 7-bar periods. So this really would have to start seeing some sort of relief around 226, 228. And the interesting thing about that is that would be just ahead of this period here. Anyone capture any of the short trade on that stall or break beneath 69.99, 69.98, specifically around this 214, 215 window? That was kind of the confirmed sell-off. Because you could afford testing here at this point in time or this point in time, but you definitely couldn't afford to do that at the 50% interval of this period here. That was a pretty straightforward downside trade, in my opinion. And this is where they could really push ahead of the 216, 228, because that's when these flip. So 224, 25, I would imagine would be some pretty volatile sticks. If you didn't jump in on the short, I would just be a little bit careful getting in like just ahead of 226, 228, because if they wanted to stall, then they would. If they want to expand, then obviously they can, but you get what I'm saying. They destroyed premiums there because they consolidated for a period of an hour at these ranges and then brought it down, so that kind of kills the long side of the trade. And this is what I'm saying. If they want to start exhausting, they might start as early as 225, 26. So let's see if they see any sort of exhaustion here, because otherwise they could have a continuation down for another 3 bars, which would take us into this period. So what do you guys think? You think that they exhaust here, or do you think that they continue to expand down? I think to exhaust, they probably need at least over 993, 94. Like for some, that's not even full exhaustion, but at least to kind of mitigate or minimize the downside risk. Like these bars right here at 226, 78 probably need some pretty good momentum back over 69.88. Otherwise that risk kind of increases. I covered most of the short trade off that 24 stick, you guys, just because I felt like the 25, 26 could retrace back up. We're hitting an exhaustion period here. And this is probably the most important exhaustion period at this point in the day, because it's going to be ahead of this 230, 236, 37, 40, 42 window, okay? What do you guys think? You think that they can retract all the way back to 69.99 by the 240 window, or do you guys think that this is kind of a done trade for the session today? What do you guys think? Quickly, because market moves fast. Volume did come back on the chains, I did notice that, but again, that's still not enough to fully negate like continued downside from occurring. You can see it battling a little bit too off the 227 stick. But they are trying to bring it back into the zone, at least over 8.8. So what was the overall range that they tracked us down? Because this is probably the reduction on the session today, especially off these ranges here. I would bet anything that they're linked to the 60 or the 70-20s, like 70-22, 24, 23. Yeah, they are. I don't think 227 was strong enough to avoid like a continuation on this. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Usually 10, 11 bars are like the continuation, so they really have to try holding off the 228, 230, 232 period and basing here so that they can extend through this period here. Otherwise that's gonna, like I said, be a continued trend down until 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. At least 232, 234-ish. Well, you're not wrong yet. It's not 240 yet, but I think they needed at least 69.92, like I was saying earlier, to like have a better odd at this point in time, to extend at this point in time. I don't think that this was enough range to fully exhaust at this period, but well, there's no hoping around here. You trade what's happening. So once they stalled and failed here and failed 69.98, and especially off that 215 mid frame, right? This is more than enough confirmation that they were going to bring it back to, at the very least, back test 69.88, right? So this isn't bad price action off the 7th, 8th bar. It's just not like the absolute best to fully confirm that they're going to negate continued downside, I guess, or avoid from making it pinnable. But that means that the 232 to 235 period has to work extra hard. Does that make sense? So sustainment during these times are important. Retracement during these periods would be pretty important. And you could like have like maybe like a mini flag on like the 2 minute, kind of like an inverse pattern on the way up. I usually call these like mirroring patterns. Does that make sense? So like if the 2 minute forms a nice flag here before 232, then you could see like the continuation back up. But otherwise, sometimes what could happen is they could form like a secondary flag down. So they'd really have to push the last few seconds here. How much time do we even have left until 32? That's not very much time. So this period here is pretty important in terms of like trying to form this little mini flag. I don't know if you can see it. It's pretty small, but like this here. See what I'm saying? And before here. Otherwise, that risk continues. Yeah, that's not a clean enough structure. Maybe off a 3 minute. So the structure even puts a lot of emphasis right now on why the 232 to 236, not really 236, I'd probably say before 236, probably closer to 235, 34 period would be so important that they try their best to negate that from happening. So you see like the 3 minute flag here. And the reason being is that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10th bars are usually an expansion or exhaustion secondary period. It's every 3 bars, right? So between 232 and 234. You can mark these green. These would be pretty important periods. And we could maybe align the 3-4 minute. I haven't really looked at the wider frames. Maybe there's a wider one. 7 minute was kind of an invalid bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Maybe a 11 minute or 9 minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. This is an interesting time frame actually, because it's between 33 and 42, and it's the 4th bar. So they could either drag this back down or negate this back to the upside. 10 minute also has, when you normally start seeing exhaustion on 3rd bars versus 4th, that's a conflicted time frame, because obviously on the smaller time frames, like, and this happened on ES2 with the 7-day, 10-day, the 2 minute was clearly valid, but it kind of conflicts with these. See, this is what would cause a much bigger downside, is if this 3rd bar continued, and it would be between that 240 to, what is this, 250 period. Same with that 9 minute. This one's not as clean though, but the 10 minute's pretty clean. If they don't retract this could easily be a pretty nasty reversal this afternoon. Same with the 11 minute. 1, 2, 3, 4. That would basically be downside continuation until just before 3 o'clock. that puts a lot more emphasis on the importance of these time frames. Let's see if there's a wider structure that has to negate. Which one of these are linked to highs? Do we know? What time were highs? 33. Which one flipped here? Probably the 11-minute. And these were our calculated times anyway at 37. So that's actually insane. Looking back at this now, okay, remember how we were saying earlier that like this period, and specifically the period between like 237 to 242 roughly was such an important period for us today. That makes a lot of sense as to why that would be the case, looking at this now, because that's the period that the market could expand downside or retract range. So we have to start seeing some very progressive sticks around that 236, 37. 237 was my first calculated time today. So this period here is very important. 240 is the actual flip, so 239 is going to be very important. And then I had some calculated periods at 241, 242. 243 is that flip on that 11 minutes, so we're just going to track it anyway. Okay? And earlier I had mentioned 69.92 being probably the minimum needed around this period, which they clearly didn't do. And like I was saying earlier, they probably need to try bringing it back to these points here at this period of time to at least mitigate some of the potential massive downside risks that could happen on these wider frames. What do you guys think? You think that they have enough momentum to try saving face and not even really like fully retracing, but at least negating like the risk of mass downside from occurring on some of these time frames? Because really they don't really need too much. They probably just need to bring it back at least, I would say, 50% of this range, which is probably closer to like 9.4, 9.5, this area here. What do you guys think? Or at least to like the mid bar, which would be like this area in here. That's probably enough to like at least mitigate some of the risk. I don't know if they could get it all the way back to that range in there, but that would probably be enough to at least try to mitigate this. 50% of the range is closer to 9.4, 9.5. What do you guys think? And the period is between 237 and roughly 243. So far, they're still stalling that 69.92.50. This range in here. I'm just adjusting this based on the actual ranges. Yeah, but they need at least like one stick that has like, do you know what I'm saying? Like some sort of volatility, kind of like what we saw in the fourth bar period here. Like pay attention to this period, because You see how this was the fourth bar expansion here at like 219, 220? Like here. Do you see that? The 220 stick? Look at how it expanded, especially ahead of the flip. This here and this here. Okay, those were expansion sticks. And that would have to be the same thing here. Does that make sense? Like these have to be like expansion upside sticks, I would say. Otherwise, they don't really have the greatest odds. So you can also just manually correlate price to these ranges if you wanted, which are technically 50% of the range, I would think, because that 50% of the range is around 69.94. And that would be that 240 period. So let's see if 240 has that momentum, at least of, you know, getting back over 9.4, ideally 9.5 I would say, but 9.4 I think was the minimum. This is exact price and time and analysis, guys, okay? This is very hard to do, by the way. Okay, at 2:40 p.m., 2:40 p.m. is extremely calculated. This is the median point that could be durational till end of session. And obviously right now, this is also the point that could mitigate risk. 69.94 being tested at exactly 2:40 p.m. Seems like market makers are trying their best to mitigate some of this risk here. I think there has to be some sort of follow through though around that 242, 243 period. I think the 9-minute flips over at 42. 1, 2, 3, 4. 10-minute doesn't flip until 50. So there's kind of an extension here between that 240 and 250 period. Whereas the 11-minute runs until 243. So that would be kind of stalling that 50% range, which obviously is not a good thing if they end up stalling around these ranges in here. Okay. Whereas if we had cleared 9.4 off this 240 stick, like broke above it, cleared above it, they would have likely done something like this, like pushed 9.6. Okay, so like these reductions at 41, 42 are not a good thing, because I don't think that, I think hitting 9.4 was good at 240, but I don't think that was enough to continue clearing at these points here. I think 43 is probably the cutoff. And you can see like the volatility on the downside coming right back at 242. Do you guys see it? Based on that volatility stall, that's also 50% of the range. And like I said, the reason why this is important is because if they continue, like this has until this period to still take out these lows and make this valid, which I didn't see any other time frames that had this, but I could be wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like this doesn't flip until 248. I don't know if that's really a precise frame, but that puts a lot of pressure off the 40 or on the 43 period. Do I have 248 marked on here? No, I don't. Also, this tends to be the case when markets become pinnable anyway. So these ranges are all pretty pinnable for today's session, but I do think staying in the zone would be in our best interest if we actually want to try getting 70-20s by the 16th. Especially because stalling a bear zone and a bear neutral zone in general is usually not a good thing. I noticed that gold was trending a little bit higher today too. So this is interesting because even though crypto's been moving along the upside, gold hasn't really stalled, which is an interesting observation. Meanwhile, obviously oil has seen quite the reversal over the last few days since stalling this 116, 118 period. I wanted to look at this too from like, you see how like this was between 137 and 126? Okay. That means that there could be like a median point here, even though this flips at 4.3. It's likely within that few minute frame afterwards. So how do I explain this? Meaning, okay, like you see this period here and this period here. There is 3 or 4 minutes here, okay? So there's probably a 4-minute period here, meaning this is probably like an invalidated bar or something like that. That puts some pressure off that 4.7, 4.8, kind of like what we were saying. Otherwise, that could be the period that they extend to backtest lows or like low of day. It'd be almost the same sort of time frame between here and here and the actual high of day that occurred, okay? I wonder what that would be. That would be like, hold on, I'll tell you guys exactly. Let's just see. They're probably not nice structures, but like, let's look at a 17. The 3 minute, like I said earlier, looked pretty good. I think 3 minutes good for timing too, because it is correlated to highs. But that's the 248, 251 period. But we could even look at like a 17, 23. Do you see what I'm saying? There's probably some bigger patterns that are forming here. Do you see this? And this is linked to high of day. 23. This flips at 258. What was that next time frame? 51 and 69. This could engulf by like 315. So do you see how like there's some inverse? This could engulf by 315, or it could form a massive bear flag into the close. So these are some pretty important time frames to kind of monitor now as we head into the session's final hours. 69 minutes would be also aligned to high of day, and that runs till 51. So this one here, I think, is probably the most concerning. That doesn't flip until 258, meaning we have until 257 for lows to be taken out and this to be valid. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4. That fourth period would be between like 332 and 349, so basically right before 350. Okay. And kind of what I was saying earlier, I think that 248, 250 is probably the earliest period, or like the most calculated period to retest lows, because that's, did you guys understand that timing concept or no? I don't usually show things like that, but that made sense to me because this was the period, okay? And there was about 7 minutes or something like that, or 3 minutes, I don't remember exactly what it was, and off that 43 period. So it probably has higher odds. Okay, do you see this? That's 5 minutes to start hitting as early as 48. Okay, like if we're looking at it like this, where is it? Here. And like the period of time that they actually sustained, for instance, or how long this took to retract down range. So that puts some pressure at these times of day, okay? if we look at it from the actual point that they stalled and held to the actual high, it was about 5 minutes. From the actual point in time of the flip was 7 minutes. From our 43, where is it? Our 43 period, which is right here, that would be 248, 250. 248, 250 had the highest odds of retesting lows here. These are calculated times of day based on the actual high of day. So sustaining at these points in time would obviously be very beneficial for the market. Taking them out, I think, would validate these continuation patterns, especially since this has until 258 to continue down. Right now it's currently stuck in an inside bar. And this could put us at risk of heading back to, like I said, core ranges, which I know is pretty steep, but that would basically take us back to our initial flags that formed this morning, which is our 71, 77, 78, okay? So how important is this period here, you think? This is probably very important, between like 250 and 258, because technically we have until 257 for that to be valid, but taking out lows at 250 would be very, very bad, okay? Does that make sense? I still have some short contracts. I initially took half off on that 224 period, and I'm gonna decide here whether or not I want to take a bit more off or just leave them. So far 250 holding is okay. Probably need a decent retracement stick back over 8788 though. What's the median frame here between here and here? 254. What time do those other time frames flip? The 11-minute 254. Okay, so we'll pay very close attention then to 53, 54 on the 8788 retracement sticks. This has until 257 basically to try taking out this 69.83 low. So there's going to be some pressure basing here. 250 holding I think is a good thing. Could this be the point in time today where they hold a higher low? And I know it's not the low of day, but like off this specific structural low, that could obviously take us back to, yeah, yes, okay, so these are very hard things to analyze, but let me just focus on my position a bit though, because I don't want to miss potential exits in case they ramp this up or something. Hold on. Did they trigger 8-8? They did. I still don't think this is strong enough though to fully avoid back testing here. I think they need at least another leg up, probably off that 54 period or something. I took off another short contract. I don't know if that was the right move, but I only left 2. And the reason why I was saying like this is pretty important because this flips at 315. if they don't retract enough range here, like this could easily turn into like a reversal into the close. You know what I'm saying? Like they could have an even bigger reversal period, which I think would take away from any continuation on the week personally. Like that's where they'd start probably capping in weekly ranges. And how much range would have to be retraced here? So from here to here, here to here, here to here. Let's see. I think it's quite a bit though. I don't know if they have that kind of momentum, but I mean, 315 is still a bit away, but okay, yeah, so it's right around our 94, 93 spots that we talked about. They'd really have to get back over there before 315 to avoid a massive sell-off, because that could last for multiple bars, kind of like this, and like sell off into the after-hours session or something. So first conditions I think would be that 250 hold, likely the 256, 57 retracement, and it doesn't have to be much, but at least over like probably 90, 91. And maybe some decent breaks around 3 to 315. There is the speaker at 3 o'clock, which I don't even know what he's talking about, but let me look at that actually and see. What is he supposed to be speaking about? So 93 and 94, 95, 93, 94, 95. Let me just write these down, since my trading view is being very weird today, and I don't want to lose anything. I already had these as like the areas, but I guess we can maybe make it closer to here. And I'm gonna mark the 258, 3 o'clock. Stall right here. This is very bad if they don't bring this back around this period here. I already had 320, 321, 325 marked earlier as like calculated points, but based on those high day structures, I think 315 is probably more important. From a structural basis, I mean, if they want to at least try sustaining here, they could try making a bit of like a bottom, at least to keep it within like these 90s areas right here, but that this needs some sticks. Like this is still pretty weak in my opinion. This is the 58 stick, right? That we're hitting right now. So at least they did a good job of negating the 17 minute for making a bear flag. Okay, this could also form into like a decent, not really like a flag, but I guess like a partial flag. I want to see if there's any that already started forming though. Like off maybe, I don't know, like yeah, like these. Okay, I know they're not linked exactly to highs, but do you see what I'm saying? This 34 minute, same time frame, 258, 224, okay, off those lows. This runs till 332. This already formed or started forming a bear flag. So this already is putting us at some risk. I know it's not aligned to the exact high of day, but it's basically aligned to the lower highs here, okay? So we have to start seeing some sort of movement here, especially after 258, between 258 and 3 o'clock, basically. Like, so far this is an okay stick. That's back over that 90 spot. Because, where is this? I don't know why this keeps getting deleted, but... And then we have some confluence around this period in time today too. And here. Okay, I'm gonna take a very quick bathroom break, but the idea is that they try sustaining the zone here, especially after this 258, 250 period, okay? And try to retest the 69, 93, 94 range, at least to mitigate some of this risk. There is news right now too, I think, which could obviously help, but this would really help negate having massive bear flags from forming and actually could engulf. So I would set some alerts, because if they start bringing this above 9.5, as early as, what's the median here between this? 224, 315, 224, 315. What's 75% of that time of 224 and 315? Would be like 38 minutes. 38 minutes would be right here. Okay, 75% of that time range is coming up right here, off here, 03 here. I'm measuring off 25 because that was the actual low, but if you want to measure off 24, it would be right here at 02. Okay, these are 75% of the time ranges. So that gives you the highest odds. I really have to use the washroom though. So this is 75% of time intervals off 224, 2:25 p.m. lows linked to 3:15 p.m. Okay? And you need at least over, if you can get back over 9.4, 9.5 at this point in time, your odds are very high or heavily increased of maybe engulfing, okay? What does engulfing mean, you guys? That, I know that would be a little bit hard to do, but it does increase your odds because this is at least 50%. To hit 75% of the range, you'd probably have to be over 9.9. That would be a pretty big move. If you get over 9.9, your odds are pretty high of engulfing. If you get closer to 9.4, 9.5, I don't know if you can fully engulf by 3:15, but you would at least have an odd of getting maybe a retest of 6.998, 9.9, okay? And that could at least keep you within these ranges for the rest of the session. I'll be back in like 2 minutes. I want to get water too. I just want to check this though first. Can someone document that? 303, calculate a time of day here. Retagging 6993 retest, 6994.25 and 95 are the big overheads. This is also 50% of that time, 75% of that time interval before 3:15 off that 224 low. So that's a very calculated period here. Okay? Relative to how high they can retract, you can probably add an extra minute if you wanted to. I had it closer to 303. I think minimum 9325. I would watch the 304 period just in case. Okay, because there could be a minute here, I guess, off of this period, but And it's roughly 38.5 minutes. So maybe like the first 30 seconds in here off the actual low that occurred. Okay. That so far looks pretty good. I would say though, if 04 can try pushing 9.4, that would be even better. Especially off the 30-second flip, which would be here. Okay. I try to use the washroom as quickly as possible because I flipped some long. I already still have some of the contracts from earlier and I had rolled my contracts into tomorrow's expiration, but I have those short contracts. I had 2 left. I took off 1 more on that break of 9192 right here. And I left the 1 just as a hedge. Okay. I'm basically flat on it at the 69.98 spot anyway, so but I left 1 just in case. I think that we did a pretty freaking good job of analyzing this though. That this wasn't easy to analyze, by the way. This was pretty hard. But that 250 low right here, like the higher low, that was, I think, the most important aspect of this. And what would 39 minutes, I guess, from... This would basically take us into, like, end of session today at 5:455. So that's pretty cool, too. And these points in time are linked to, like, basically 359. Yeah, it looked like a good hold, but it needed that strength to follow through, basically. All right, what do you guys think? You think that ES has what it takes to retest 69.99, 69.98 before 315 to really help mitigate basically those nasty reversals from happening? So far, this has already retraced 50%. I think it needs at least over... I don't know if it could engulf, like I said, because I feel like it has to push quite a bit to do that, but 75% would be pretty close to where it's hitting right here. Okay. Like, once you start hitting those green areas, basically, here, then you're in the clear, which is basically our 9899, which is where I went short, right here. So how much time do we have left? We have... It has to be before 15. It can't be at 15. It has to be before. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 minutes. 6 minutes? What do you guys think? Yeah, I saw that, Brendan. The video was very, very strong. It broke that to my spot. Look, that was my target on NVIDIA. I mentioned it earlier. That 196.03 spot. Look at the volume coming in here too on it. That's pretty cool that that's doing that at these points in time too, in terms of ES. So you have to understand like the different scenarios. So one scenario is if they stall here but they hold 50%, okay, that can keep odds extended. At least it doesn't put us at massive risk of downside. Another odd is that they break here. Okay, that looks good. It's not a full engulf, which probably makes it so that this area and this area are max range. A third look at it is if they clear this area and they clear high of day before this point in time, then we still have odds in play of getting these extended continuation. Does that make sense? Those are your three odds basically at this point. Actually, I guess your fourth would be if they had a massive sell down stick, which I don't see them doing that in the span of like 3 minutes, but okay. So what do you guys think? Which scenario has the higher odds? This is around 66% here, okay? 75% retracement gives us, it still gives us odds to take out high of day, but could limit the range, okay? Quickly, what do you guys think? A lot of you voted that the highs were in. So it would be pretty interesting to see what kind of happens here. How do you pull up the Twitter poll again? Or Twitch poll? I always forget the link. Does that make more sense to you guys though in terms of like how odds can work today? Especially since these periods of time were also linked to end of session. So them retracting here is pretty important. Yeah, well, I mean, we had a lot of confluence around 7008, 7015. But if they engulf this period, Brendan, we could still see 7022. If they engulf, we could still see the 7020s. Remember, max range for today's actual session was 7036, 7042, 7052, 7058, right? So that for the actual session. So 7022 is not far out of reach if they engulf this period. Does that make sense? It's not like we still have 45 minutes. But they would have to have really progressive price action and much bigger sticks, which is kind of like what we're seeing happen here, right? 311 getting a break over that 75% of range, giving us 3 more minutes to actually engulf this period. Long so far, paying off really, really well. And specifically off this 51-minute period. And that was exactly that double bottom formation that we had drawn. If they fully bring this back and retract. Quickly, guys, let's vote. Who thinks they're going to fully engulf this? And if they do engulf, what price point do they have to take out? Yep. Yes, I did. I already had longs from earlier and for tomorrow. But I took a long when they held that 250 stick. Because I still had 2 short contracts. And the way I did that is I ended up covering 1 more short contract on that break of 9-1. Because I'm exposing myself to a newer long position that obviously expires today, right? Which is a lot riskier, knowing that they could stall at these points. That's kind of like a way of maximizing your returns. There's a minute to go, you guys. Come on, let's do a poll really, really quickly. How many think that they could engulf? How many think they're going to stall? I'm going to set this only to 1 minute because the time's coming up. So to engulf, that's quite a bit of range that they'd have to take out in a single minute. I figured that that's probably not going to happen. Maybe 75% seems more realistic, which could still keep us at an odd of getting like the 7003, 7004, 7006, 7008 retest. But you never know. If they put out news or something like that, then who's to say? And if they do take out highs, what's the area that they have to take it out by? It's not just about taking out highs. It's also about like what range you take it out at that given point in time. If they do take out highs, but it's or retest highs, but it's after 315, like maybe between that 321, 325 period we discussed earlier. That could still keep some odds in play, but I think that keeps our ranges in line to what we were saying earlier, okay? So yeah, just by glancing at this, like there's definitely not an odd that they could do that, obviously, within like a 5-second window. But I would prefer that they try keeping it closer to 9899. Needs to close over 250. There was that other time frame we looked at too. What was it again? Not the 51. There's some extended ones. They're not linked to exact high of day. What was it again? Do you guys remember? Like even this 53 minute, like look, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Like this could continue to the whole session. What time frame was it though? Not this. This runs till end of session too. The one that was linked to the lower high. This is till 328, which is also a really nice time frame. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Look at the 56 minute, guys, on the 7th bar. This flips at 328. This is a really, really nice time frame. And we already had odds at 332, so that could be a good one to watch for continuation. But what was that other frame that we looked at? This one too. This one runs until end of session. 1, 2, 3, 4. 4th bar exhausted. 5, 6, 7. 7th is trying to come back and make its way around by 351. So there's definitely some late day odds for today's session into end of day. But we did have those odds that maybe it was beneath the... What was it? This is actually nice too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is 321. Maybe this was it. This is the 321 period that aligned with our calculated times earlier. So it still has until, there's some extended ones for engulfing. They're not assigned to high of day, but being assigned to high of day gives you a better idea of the range, okay? So kind of like this. Okay, let me go back and look at these. Even this here is not bad. This is 340. These are really nice time frames today for our patterns. This is really clean too off that 254. It's not directly high of day, but it's that lower high at 148. And it's the continuation till close. So this is also a really nice time frame and aligns pretty well. You could also even look at the higher lows off 250 and what correlates with them. So off 2:50 p.m., you could probably even look at a 50-minute, 125-minute. Okay, those could be some decent frames. I think it was the 40. Like, we're going to watch this anyway. This obviously is not engulfing to highs, but even engulfing to the lower high, okay, around 2 o'clock or before 2 o'clock would make sense. I think it was the smaller frames, these ones. Okay, like, do you see? When they flipped over, these kind of run till end of day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That 7th bar exhaustion is pretty nasty. 8, 9, 10. So that could be like the very, very, very late day confluence there too. Even this negated. Do you see that? Off 16. So I would say that the best odds coming up are probably around that 321 period to 328, 332. What was that one time frame though that we looked at earlier that had, I'm trying to remember what it was. Not the 17. was. It was linked to 1:50 p.m. Was it these? It was this. It was the 34-35 minute. Remember that we looked at earlier? These ones are still linked to the 150 period and that 258, and they run till 332. So these ones could still basically help odds, I guess, in terms of getting back to these structural bases. The 33 is linked to that 144, which was that lower high off 127. I know these ones are more aligned to like the actual structural basis, but the reason why this period is important, guys, too, is because we don't want to form a star reversal back down, right? Because this could obviously form a star reversal back down. So I think between 315 to 332 is pretty important to avoid that from happening around 345, 350, 356. Do you see that? This is off the 25, okay? So this isn't directly linked to low to highs, but it's linked to that higher low at 325. 335. So yes, and these would be the secondary odds that I had earlier. Calculated times at 3:20 p.m. are clearing and retesting. 3:21 p.m. is a flip, but 3:20 was calculated. 321 is more aligned to, what was it? That 61 minute, I think, right? Yes, the 61 minute is what's aligned to that period here in terms of that 7th bar continuation, okay? So these are some of the earlier periods of coming back and retesting. The highest odds seem closer to this period here, okay? I don't have them marked, but 328, 327, 321, if they don't try here, that's so far a pretty good stick at 321, you guys. 321 giving a retest of 70.01. This puts us at a pretty good odd for last part of the session today, especially considering we're hitting 7 bars on a lot of these time frames. You're welcome. This was honestly a very hard session for me personally in terms of analyzing this period in the day. And also switching short right here and trying to decide exactly what I want to do with my position for tomorrow. Because had they formed that bigger pattern on like the 51 minutes, like that would have ended up being very bad for wider structures, right? Or even off the 2 hours or like the 122 minute. Okay, 122 minute ended up flagging here, which is actually really cool because this is basically aligned to that 222, 224, 225 period. Look at that. Kind of like really clean reflag. So 121 probably, 122, 123. These are really nice structures. These also run till end of session today. This is the 250. I really like this time frame because it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 off that higher low at 250. This runs until session close basically. So we have odds of running till 4:55 p.m., 4:58 p.m. I noticed them earlier. So there was pretty good odds of continuation until session close on today's session. Best odds that I had of retesting high of day, like I was saying earlier, was, so this period here met this point in time. They obviously didn't expand or extend here, but this point in time here, there's really good odds around this point in time to take out highs. And if and when we take out highs, we have to trigger 70.0450 at a minimum, okay? Do you guys think we still would have odds of tagging 70.20s today if they can take out 70.04, 70.08, 70.12? Before 332? I think so. And they did a very good job of holding here, so I haven't covered anything yet, guys, off the new contracts I took. I'll let you guys know when I do. I'm kind of waiting for this 325, 27, 28 period because this point in time had the best odds. Did you guys capture the long trade back up? I didn't enter it exactly at 250. I entered it closer to here, but that was like on the hold of 88. That's when I entered, guys, when they held 88 at 258. I know it was some risk, but I still had 2 short contracts. I covered the 1 more short contract, and then I basically broke flat on that last one. You could have entered here, but it was a little bit riskier. I kind of wanted to wait for some confirmation. If they would have snapped up at like 4.9 back to 8.8, then I would have entered at 250. Does that make sense? Like if they would have taken it exactly like this, okay, at this point in time, back to 8.8, then I would have jumped in at 250. But I think that stall right there, 70.0450 being tested at exactly 325. That was the earliest odd for getting back to high of day here. And this is really good because it gives us an odd of expanding through that 327, 28, 30, 32 period. Well, I still have my long for tomorrow. I rolled out my calls from earlier, and I still have some calls that I bought this morning, but I had calls yesterday. So my calls from yesterday, I sold half when we stalled here, and then I started rolling into tomorrow off of the 9188, and then for today's expiration I did SPX. So that one was a little bit harder to hold, and then I ended up doing the SPY short right here. The long I did right here though expires today, so I have to be very careful obviously, but I figured if they test 70-20s today, I want to capture the full leg. I don't want to just capture the move off tomorrow's expiration date, because there's not even that much time left in the day, and it's quite a bit of range if they did do something like that. Can someone document these sticks? That's exactly the spot you'd have to hit at these times. 70.0450 was the minimum condition to be met. 327.28 have the highest odds of clearing that spot here. And this is something that would put us in a good position for continuation, because the period is between 328, 330, 332, which helps us, because what do you need for continuation? Don't get this wrong, especially off these spots here. What would you need is off 70.04. You could take some off here if you want. I'm personally going to wait till 328, 330. What would you need? What helps allow for continuation? So these are extremely calculated spots, really calculated times. What do you need for continuation? What helps continuation? Aside from clearing price. So the price we have to clear, we already know is 70.0450, 70.05 area. What helps this continue? Hurry up, you guys. There's only like a few seconds. What would help us continue? What's a major aspect right here? Is 70.0450 a heavy spot? Yes, like I can tell just by the way that this is trading. What would help us here? So we've taken out high of day, but we haven't taken out highs on the option chain. That's a very, very, very important thing to note, okay? So we've taken out high of day. We have yet to take out highs on the actual chain. No, what's something that helps? Continuation. Post, we already triggered this. They didn't clear it yet. What would help us here? What's something that we have here? Multi-flips. There's multi-flips, you guys. Come on. Multi-flips gives what? Continuation. Okay, volatility. Extensions. Yeah, volume obviously helps too. Multi-flips can help you accumulate that volume. Okay? You guys have to start like seeing that, understanding that concept before it happens. This multi-flip here can help us. We have another flip at 330. That can help push 329. We have another flip at 320, 332. That can help push 331. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are these important spots to have multi-flips at? Notice I never had many multi-flips today. Okay, are these important spots to have multi-flips at? 7004, 7006, 7008. The most calculated spots for today's session. Yes, obviously, right? Because this is the area that could expand us. And that's the area that they stalled us at earlier to reduce range. Do you think it's a coincidence that they have multi-flips around these points in time and price? I think after trading with me, you guys probably don't think anything is a coincidence anymore. Everything I see happen now, I'm just like, oh, yeah, like everything in the world is just rigged. I feel like I'm like one of those conspiracy theorists now. Like, I don't, everything happens. Like, when I saw, like, all these ceasefire agreements, and, like, I already knew that ES was likely going to flag from, like, a week and a half ago. I was like, yeah, oil's going to tank. They're going to make these fake agreements. It all just kind of fits their narrative. They just need a narrative to fit what they actually want to see happen on the market. And you can see it even on, like, these. Like, we already knew 7004, 06, 08 back in here were going to be the areas that could push the market, right? They stall this intentionally during this mid-session recycle range, only to bring it back here at these calculated times of both time and price, because they know if they push here at these specific times, they could have that continuation until close, because this is durational until close type of session, right? Which, hence the importance of them trying to not give that back up during this period here. And the importance of them testing 7006, 08 exactly at 331, 332. 7006 being tested here. These are huge spots for us. This is what keeps 7012, 7015, 7018, potentially 7022 and 32 in play for the session today. Okay? And this was a really, really good long if you took the long off same day expirations. And we know the exact points in time and price that they're going to break them at. 331, 332 testing, 7008. These are core ratios, guys, off today's open and today's lows. So these are very big spots for us to trigger, especially at this point in time, because this is what's going to keep us potentially in play till end of session today. Did they tag 7008? I'm pretty sure my alert went off. They did tag it, right? No clearance over it yet, but they did test it. What else could happen during a multi-flip period here? So we tested 7006.25. We cleared 7004.50. We tested 7008. We never closed above 7008 though. What could happen here? And look, pay attention. They flagged this at 329. 1, 2, 3, 4. What has to happen on this stick here for this to have some continuation or odds of continuation, especially on like a smaller frame? Typically, you'd have to see it go green, right? Which means probably getting back over 7006, which isn't looking very likely. What's something that tends to happen after multi-flip periods, especially if you end up tagging a specific spot but then stalling? And these are very, very big price points for us anyway, guys. So If you didn't take anything off in these areas, I would recommend that you took at least something at 331, 332, because they are very big spots, and obviously volatility can start occurring in these ranges here. And that's the answer I was looking for that no one answered, was volatility. Okay, you can have a very big increase in volatility, especially off these ranges here. Okay, whereas had they cleared 7008, this likely would have been the range that we could have seen trigger to the upside. Does that make sense? And it is quite a lot of range. So this is quite a lot of room down. Okay. Because it's supposed to be the same sort of volatility on the way back up, which basically is what makes this volatile. Okay. Volatility was the right answer that I was looking for, because that's what could have pushed to 70.15. Do you see what I'm saying? And we already know 70.15, 70.14 were some of the bigger overheads for today's session. When can we figure that they might stall? What do you guys think? When could they start stalling the range and volatility? We had another flip at 340. When can they start stalling the range of volatility, you guys? You have to get better at understanding and applying these concepts on your own. When downside risk or range, it starts being equated to what your upside would have been if you cleared 7008. So in other words, if they had cleared 7008, we already know that 7015, 50, 7016, these were big areas that we talked about earlier this morning. Okay, so could this now, especially based on highs, and let's say based on like highest open close ratio, which would be here, is this starting to align pretty well with our spots here? Yes. Okay, so that could be an area that they hold, and it makes sense because it's off our 69.99. So it's kind of like a calculated range reduction that would imply the move that could have occurred had they cleared 08, because we already know that clearing 08 is huge, right? And we already know that there's another window coming up here at 340. So if there's another window coming up here at 340, they have to get moving again at 338, 339, and specifically to retest that same area, 7006, 7008. Do you get what I'm saying? These are not easy things to explain. They're very, very complex, especially since I'm the one that's created these things, but I'm trying to get you guys to understand it from a sense of time, price, range, implied volatility, reduction, how it applies to the ranges that we already discussed earlier in the session today, right? Which was specifically these ranges in here around 70.15, 70.15.50. And sometimes they do that if they want to be specific about where they pin the close, right? Because maybe pushing to 70.15 as early as 336, maybe that could have been a lot more range in movement before 4 p.m. today. Does that make sense? So how important do you guys think it would be for some retest here of 7006? I would say probably at a minimum. 7004.50 would be the absolute minimum, but like 7006 I think is probably the better odd for at least giving us a pretty decent chance of taking out 70.08 and maybe getting the 70.12, 70.15 ranges. What do you guys think? Pretty important. Look at the 130 or 339. 339 testing 70.0625. This is really increasing odds for a retest here at 340 for that 70.08 mark. 340 was the next odd of retesting that high, which so far is looking okay. I would have preferred that they closed over 70.0625 though, so that could imply some volatility on this stick. This is the earliest odd. It's not necessarily the highest. We do have some pretty late odds today for end of session, so part of me also thinks that they might want to just maybe delay till end of the close or something today. And same sort of idea here with this here. This was too low of a close. Again, I think if they closed this just a tiny bit higher, they for sure could have taken out the highs here, okay? And likely pushed. So 2.2575 in reduction would have taken out 08. And I could tell that they were going to stall based on them closing that a little bit too low. Do you guys notice the increase in volatility that I had mentioned back in here, that this is likely going to increase volatility, especially when you have multi-flips like this, and specifically around the 70.06, 70.08 areas? Why do you guys think that is? I know that it's high of day and taking out high of day, like that's the obvious, but we already knew that these areas were calculated way before we ever even hit close to 70.02, 03, 04, 05, whatever. Why do you guys think that is? Why would these areas, aside from them being highs and taking out highs and whatever, why would these be areas of volatility? And these could definitely be spots that they end up pinning the session today if they wanted to, like if they decide they don't want it above 70.08. Why do you guys think that these would be some areas of volatility? I'm going to do one more poll for max range for real time, since a lot of you voted earlier that highs were in. Okay. No, it's because they're calculated ranges that expand core ratios. That's why. They could push another 30 points. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? They're not random numbers. They're areas that could expand the session, off session, open session, high session, low session, close. Do you get what I'm saying? The flips is one thing. It's more about like the actual price point. Like, why would this price point matter so much? That's why. Because these price points are what could push here, okay, and here. Does that make sense? The market obviously has to be prepared for that. if we retest highs, you guys, on on April 14th, that would be absolutely insane, especially considering how much we've analyzed this specific date for the last month. That would be crazy. We did decide that the 15th had the best odds based on like those manual calculated times, but doing it on the 14th would be pretty wild. So far, I feel like they reduced those odds by this reduction here, but we saw a pretty crazy end of day session yesterday, so I mean, anything is possible really in these market dynamics, like the 350 stick pushing out the full zone. Who's to say they can't do that again today? Do you know what I'm saying? Like completely take out 7008, 12, 15. They could if they wanted to. So we'll have to wait and see. There's some volume coming back in here too on some of the option chains. I'm kind of monitoring SPY SPX calls here too into the close. Did any of you guys capture the second long into the session today? Off the 250, 258 confirmation holds? A window didn't start reopening till 248, 249. So, I mean, usually there's some odds at 245, but they weren't very high today. So I'm mainly watching this window here. And I will start covering if I start feeling like they could start capping us in for the session today. I need to also make sure I'm watching my email. Do we have odds of staying pinnable between like 6988, 6994, 6999, 7001, 7004, 7006, 7008? Yeah, unfortunately this is a pinnable area for us, so whether or not they want to extend this is honestly going to be relative to, I would say, at least holding the 9998 area. Technically there's some room to this 9594, but I think that would increase volatility because it took us so long to even break back over that in the first place, right? So heading back there wouldn't really be in our best interest, I guess. 49 was the time that had odds today, which is interesting because it's usually obviously 350, but I think that'll be a very important mark for us to see basically whether or not they break back beneath here, right, or sustain, or if they can try getting back above here, which was basically the previous high of day. And that makes a lot of sense for the 350 period, like obviously the final minute, like I think in terms of trying to determine volatility. Do you get what I'm saying? And specifically off our 9998 areas, like you see how it's in this box. I feel like this kind of gives us an idea of which end they want to break, whether it's breaking back here or breaking back here, and either end is going to either extend you probably back to the 9493 or likely try pushing you. If they keep it neutralized, I think that's where it would be pinnable. Does that make sense, you guys? And we already have a flip at 349. 350 is a generic time of day every day, but the actual time slot today is 349. So this would basically help us determine, or at least try our best to decipher our odds. Does that make sense? And from even a price perspective, it makes sense. From a time perspective, it makes sense. From intraday structure, it makes sense. And from our base model theory, it makes sense. Because breaking beneath 99 is breaking back to the bear zone, right? Sustaining 99 is holding a neutral zone. Getting back over 0203 is getting back over high of day. Getting back over 06 is mid-neutral spot. So it's pretty funny how these things align. So far 49 stalling, 70.03, 70.02. It seems more neutralized to me personally, but 94 pin. 94 pin would be probable, Brendan, if they take down 98, 97 at the 350 mark and don't retract over 70.04 by like 354, 355. So far, these odds though they're trying their best to basically hold the line. Does that make sense? So we'll see what they do here off the 350 stick. There it is. 70.04 being reclaimed here, and especially on that hold. Do you see that structural hold at 349? That is very important for this to keep odds in play for the session here. Where's SPX trading at? 69.70-ish, right? 77 or something? No. Oh, it's still not even there yet. They did trigger 70 almost though. So we figure that these would be the core ratios for SPX. So even though we haven't really hit core ratios on ES, these areas here above 6.6, 6.8 would be core ratios on SPX. No close over 70.04. Brendan could be on that track, but again, I think it's going to be mainly if they don't retract by 5.4, 5.55. They're keeping both odds alive, basically. And I say that because they, even though, let me just delete these, even though they didn't take out 06, 08, they still, or closed above it, they still retested it and held the line at 4.9. Does that make sense? And they held at 50. So it keeps that volatility. I think the volatility range in here is about 4 points above, like, and 4 points below. So, which would, I think, align us to this 9495 area. Kind of like, think of it like this. Like this. Which keeps it within, I think, the neutral spots. Does that make sense? So it makes it so that there's a lot of structural support here. I think holding 9.6, 9.7 is actually pretty good because they haven't brought it back to 9.4, 9.5 yet, which still gives them an odd of coming back to try retracting here. But you can see how calculated these ranges are though into session close today. I think this is enough to keep 70-20s at an odd for the 15th and 16th though. Even though they're bear ranges or neutral ranges, they're core ratios. Okay? I would see if 5.3 can hold the 9.9 and get back over 70.03. How did you guys do today, just in general, like overall? It was a pretty interesting session, I think. This is the 55 period, right? There was an extension at 56 was the flip today, but 5-5 is a generic time of day, so I just figured we'd probably be good to watch that time frame. And I don't even think I really have to say much. Obviously, we have to get back over 70.03.04 during these periods here. Otherwise, odds get very low of getting back to 70.08 retest for end of session today. But so far, I mean, 9-7, 9-6 holds are okay. They're still trying to protect that 9-5 area. Do you see how they're basically holding a few points above and a few points below? Do you guys see that or no? What I mean by that is like a few points beneath here, okay? And a few points above here. Do you see it? It's like 2 points. Let me put these alerts back on. Okay, and sometimes that does create pinnable action, kind of like a 2-point ratio in between. So the overhead is for sure the 70.03.04 area, okay? So think of it as like 2 points beneath, okay? Does that make sense? So like this 70.03, 70.03.75 spot, that's the overhead right now on ES. And they probably would have to take that out before the final minute for that to even have an odd of getting back to retest that high range, basically, is how I interpret that or read that. All right, what do you guys think? Where are they going to pin the close? Really quickly here, do you guys think that they can retest 70.08 by 359? You would absolutely have to take out 70.04, okay, for that to even be a probability. I feel like them keeping it here keeps it extremely pinnable, okay, around 70.03, 04, 05, 06, 01, whatever. You have to at least get back here, I would say before 359 for that to even be a probability, okay? So 358 getting over 04, I think that gives us a decent odd. So let's see. $70.0450 claim at exactly final second of 358. That gives 70.08 a very high odd for retesting here at 359. And it keeps those 70.10, 70.12 areas in line for after the bell here. Did you guys see that? Look at that final second push here. Did you see it at 58? Look, that's insane. This is what keeps that high of day odd basically in play. I think that they have the highest odd after the close, but 70.06.25 retest at 359. I still think that could keep that 70.08 odds for after the bell here. Let's see. $70.04 is a calculated spot to pin at too. So if they leave it here, that's still okay. These are still the 72, 75, 78 point ranges. The odds were better at 4, so they'll probably push at 4. 70.06.25 close is insane for 359. And look at the time of day they're retesting highs, right at 4 o'clock. That's impressive. Overnight conditions, I think as long as we sustain the zone in general, then we should still have some decent odds of getting these extensions in these neutral areas. 70.06 close is not bad, you guys. That's still a pretty good close considering the movement back down in here. I think over the 70.08 would be best case scenario. Ideally, if we can hold above 6991, 93, 94, 95 for overnight, that would be even better than sustaining 88. If they decide to rinse and recycle range, that could just leave us with odds of getting back to our core ranges, which would be 6971, 78, 81, basically these ranges in here. Otherwise, keeping it zone bound for these next 2 days is pretty vital because we're basically back to our all-time high zone. Did SPX close at that 6966 that I was saying? Yeah, it did. That's crazy, you guys. Look at where SPX closed. Right at that core ratio that we looked at. Which is why I think this area could be okay for ES, but on a 2-day basis, this is the final days tomorrow for this fourth bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. So tomorrow had the highest odds of retesting all-time highs. I still think that could happen, especially if they do a decent job of holding our zone. Okay, so I know that they could take it back to core, like back to the 70s and 80s, but that would probably reduce our odds of getting an all-time high break. Does that make sense? So whereas maybe keeping it zone bound would keep those odds in play. Okay, I'm very tired from today's session, so I'm going to sign right off, okay? I will see you guys tomorrow.